Okay, class, let's talk about multiplying mixed numbers today. Well, the first thing that we have to know about multiplying mixed numbers is we need to know how to change a mixed number to an improper fraction. And we have a method that we use to do that, and we commonly call that the popcorn method. And what the popcorn method says is that it says to take our denominator, multiply it by the whole number, add that answer, add that to the numerator, and put it back over your denominator. So in this example, I'm going to take 3 times 4 and get 12. I'm going to take 12 and add 2 to that to get 14. And then I'm going to put that back over the 3 because that's our original denominator. So let's see if we can do a couple of them. So in this first one here, it says 9 3/5. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the 5 and multiply it by the 9 to get 45. You take the 45 and add 3 to that, which gives us 48. We write that down as our numerator. And then we put the 5 back as our denominator, which is the finish of the popcorn. For this other one, 9 times 6 is 54, plus 7 gives us 61. So we write 61, and we put it over 9. 61 over 9. That's as simple as that. Okay? Now, there's a reason why we need to know that, and we'll find that out here in just a few moments. So let's move on to this question right here. This particular problem says, what does this problem mean? Not what does it say, but what does it mean? Whenever I see this question or see this math problem, it asks me a question. And the question that is asked is, what is 1/2 of 1/2? Now, if we look at this in terms of a picture, we have a rectangle here, which is 1, and it says, what is 1/2 of half? So we need to see half first. So here is 1/2. And what I want to know is, what is 1/2 of that? Well, 1/2 means that I'm going to cut it like that and take this piece right here. And what is that piece worth in relation to the whole? Well, if I continue it out with pieces that size, it's equal to 1/4. So the answer to this problem then is 1/4. Okay? Let's go to the next one. Well, if we think about that same question that's being asked here, this one is asking, what is 1/2 of 1/4? So if we look at that in terms of a picture again, we draw a rectangle, which represents our 1, and it says I need 1/2 of a 1/4. So I need a 1/4. So I'm going to divide my picture up into 4ths. And then here is my 1/4. Now what I'm looking for is, what is 1/2 of that? Well, the value of this piece right here is actually 1/8. So if we do all the rest of them in the same size, that's one piece out of the 8 that we have. So 1/2 of 1/4 is 1/8. Well, the question that I have for you then is, what does it look like we're doing to these problems? In this first one here, 1/2 times 1/2 gave us 1/4. It appears that we're multiplying 2 times 2 to get 4 and 1 times 1 to get 1. In this question, it's the same kind of thing. 1 times 1 to get 1, 2 times 4 to get 8. But what if I gave you this problem? This one says, what is 1/2 of 2/3? Well, if we draw this picture out, I first need 2/3 because I'm looking for 1/2 of 2/3. So I'm going to chop my picture into thirds. It's as close as I can get. And I need, this piece is 1/3, this piece is 2/3. Well, 1/2 actually asks, what's 1/2 of that? Well, if I've got 2 pieces, then 1/2 would be 1/3. So this is equal to 1/3. Well, that kind of blows the thing out of the water about multiplying across, because if I were to multiply this across, we end up with 1 times 2 is 2, and 2 times 3 is 6. So 2 over 6, oh, I see. Well, 2 over 6 simplifies to 1/3 if I divide each of these by 2. So it does still work. It's just in the picture it gave us the simplified form. So what does it appear that we're really doing? We're really just multiplying our numerators together and multiplying our denominators together. So we have a little wrap that helps us to remember what to do to multiply fractions. And it goes kind of like this. To multiply fractions, you know you got 'em. It's top times top and bottom times bottom. It's a simple, silly little wrap, but it's very important because this first line tells us what we can multiply. We can only multiply fractions together. So once we have fractions, It's easy. We know we got them. It's just top times top and bottom times bottom. So what if I have a problem like this? Two mixed numbers. Well, I told you back at the beginning when we were looking at this popcorn method that we were going to need it again. And this is when we actually need it. Because as the rap says, I can only multiply fractions. Well, this is not a fraction. This is a mixed number. It is made up of a whole part and a fraction. It's not a fraction. But because of the popcorn method, I can change it into a fraction. So I do 4 times 3, which is 12, plus 3 gives us 15, so I write that down, and I put it back over the 4. Now we have a fraction. So we do the same thing to the other one. 5 times 2 gives us 10, plus 3 gives us 13, and we put it back over the 5. Simple as that. Now, we could multiply top times top, bottom times bottom, and then last but not least, we have to simplify our answer. But in this lesson, what I want us to focus on, besides just multiplying fractions together in mixed numbers, is how do I simplify a problem? Well, what we look for when we want to simplify a problem is we look for numbers on the top and numbers on the bottom that have common factors. Take, for instance, the 15 and the 5. I can divide them both by 5, so I'm going to do so. So when I do 15 divided by 5, I actually get a 3. When I do 5 divided by 5, I get a 1. Now what that does is that makes our numbers much smaller, so that when I'm multiplying, it makes it a lot easier to do. I could do this 15 times 13 and come up with an answer of 195. And this 4 times 5 and get a 20. But then I've got 195 divided by 20. If I simplify the problem first, then my numbers end up being much smaller. So we have 3 times 13 for our numerators, which we know is 39. And we have 4 times 1, which we know is just 4. So now, for me personally, I would much rather simplify 39 by 4 than to multiply 195 by 20. So now this becomes just a division problem. And if you need to, you can go out to the side and do the division. We know that 4 goes into 39 9 times. 9 times 4 gives us 36. We subtract, we get 3 left over. So the way we write this is this 9 becomes our whole part, our leftovers becomes our numerator, and the number that we divided by becomes our denominator. So our answer to this problem is 9 3/4. Let's try a second problem. So now we go back to our wrap, and it says to multiply fractions. Do I got them? Do I have fractions here? No, I don't. This first one, again, is a mixed fraction. It's a mixed number. So we have to use the popcorn method to change it to a fraction. So we do 5 times 5 is 25, plus 2 gives us 27. We write that down, and we put it back over the 5. Now this second fraction, 4 over 9, it is a fraction. So we just leave it as is. Now we ask ourselves, are there numbers on top and on bottom that share common factors? And in this particular one, yes, we do. 27 and 9 share a 9 in common. So I can divide this by 9. I can divide this by 9. So the 27 becomes a 3. The 9 becomes a 1. Now many people, when they see the 27 and the 9, they think that only 3 is in common. So if we were to divide this by 3, we would get 9 as an answer. And if we divided the 9 by 3, we would get 3. Well, that 9 and that 3, they could still simplify further by another 3, and you end up with the 3 and the 1. So if you just divided by 9, you'd get there a lot faster. So now my top numbers are 3 and 4, which is 12. And our bottom number is 5 and 1, which is 5. And now we simplify through division. So this one is, again, if you need to, you can come over to the side and do the division. 5 goes into 12 2 times. 2 times 5 gives us 10. We subtract, we get 2 left over. When I run out of numbers in the dividend, I stop when we're working with fractions. So this number here on top becomes our whole number. Our leftovers become our numerator, and the number we divided by becomes our denominator. So we end up with 2 2/5. 2 more questions and we're done. Next one. What if we have a mixed number times a whole number? So again, we ask ourselves the question, do we have fractions? Because our rap says to multiply fractions, and no, we don't. So again, this mixed number, we use the popcorn method to change it to a fraction. 9 times 7 is 63, plus 5 gives us 68. We divide that by 9. Now a whole number, how do I change a whole number into a fraction? Well, you just put it over 1. Because in the true sense of a fraction, your denominator tells me how many pieces it takes to make one. In this case, 1 piece. And how many do I have? 3 of them. So it still works. So 3 over 1, if we have a whole number, just put a 1 on bottom. Now we ask, do we have any numbers that could simplify? Well, I have a 3 here on top and I have a 9 here on bottom. So I could simplify by dividing by 3. So I divide this by 3, it becomes a 1. I divide the 9 by 3 and it becomes a 3. You'll notice I didn't show the division this time, and you don't have to. So now when I multiply across, I've got 68 and 1, which is 68. 3 times 1, which gives us 3. And then we simply divide. Again, move to the side if you need to. 68 divided by 3. 3 goes into 6 2 times. Get a 6, subtract 0. Bring your 8 down. 3 goes into 8 2 times. Get 6, subtract. We get 2. We ran out of numbers, so we stop. So our whole part is 22. We have 2 on top. We have 3 on bottom. So we end up with 22 2/3. Now, last twist that we have. Now that's shown you how to multiply 2 mixed numbers together. A mixed number times a fraction. A mixed number times a whole number. And now we throw in the negatives. The negatives aren't really going to be any different than what we've been doing along the way. It's just now we know that since I've got one number is negative and multiply, one negative number makes the whole answer negative. So I just put a negative where I'm going to put my answer, and then I begin working my problem. So I've got a mixed number. So again, change that to a fraction by doing the popcorn. 4 times 6 is 24. Plus 3 gives us 27. Divided by 4. Okay. 5 and 9, it is a fraction, so I leave it alone. And we multiply. Now I know it seems like we've had a lot of 9s and 3s and 27s. They're not all going to be like that. Okay? Just in these particular problems, that's the way it ended up. So now we ask, do we have any simplifying that we can do? Of course, we've got the 9 and the 27. So the 27 becomes a 3. The 9 becomes a 1. Because I divided them both by 9. So we end up with 3 times 5, which gives us 15. 4 times 1, which gives us 4. And then we divide that. 4 goes into 15 3 times. So 4 times 3 is 12. So 15 take away 12 gives us 3 over 4 as our answer. But we're not done yet because we've got to remember that in this problem I had one negative. So my answer ends up being negative 3 3/4. So to kind of review what we've been doing with these multiplying mixed numbers is we have 4 basic steps. We make fractions using the popcorn method, unless it's a whole number, and then we put a 1 on the bottom. And then we do top times top, bottom times bottom, and simplify. But in this particular lesson, we actually simplified before we multiplied. So we really added a step right in here that says simplify the problem. Where we're looking to find, do we have common numbers or numbers on top and numbers on bottom that share common factors? And if you can simplify the problem, it's going to make your answers a lot easier to find. And that's how we multiply mixed numbers.